In the previous video, we saw how to upload images via GraphQL to Cloudinary, and in this video, we're then going to see how to retrieve images from Cloudinary and how to serve them via GraphQL. So remember, in the previous video, we extended the user type by adding a photo field. So let's just test that it works. So let's query for the first user, and let's get the name and the photo of this user. And in fact, what we get is the publicly available name from Cloudinary and the extension, right? So that's the public ID dot and the extension. Now, the problem is that Cloudinary needs the entire URL, as you saw in one of the earlier videos, to serve that image. So what we should do is that make sure that when someone is asking for the photo, we in fact return a Cloudinary URL. Now, you may argue that we could have stored the entire Cloudinary URL in the database, and that would be absolutely valid. But what I will show you as part of this video is how to actually manipulate that URL so that we can, for example, reduce the width or add the Q or the F auto tags to the URL. So the way we're going to achieve that is by adding something here to photo. So we're going to add an argument. We're going to call this options, and we will also introduce a new concept in this video called custom scalar types. So far we've been using the built-in scalar types that GraphQL provides us. So those would be string, integer, boolean, and there's some others like float, etc. There's also enum, but you can also build your custom scalar types. And in fact, we're going to do that. So the way you build a custom scalar type in GraphQL is that you specify the keyword scalar and then the name of the type that you want. And I'm going to call mine Cloudinary options. And that is going to be the type that my options is going to take. Okay, so how am I going to define what my custom scalar is going to do? Well, we need to open the resolver file and we need to add a new function to the resolver map. So at the very end of my user resolver, I'm going to add Cloudinary options, which is going to instantiate a new GraphQL scalar type, and it will have some options. Now, GraphQL scalar type is something that we need to bring into the application here. So let's scroll up here, and I'm going to say const GraphQL scalar type, and then require it from GraphQL itself. And this will allow us to build a custom scalar for GraphQL. Now, every time when you build a custom scalar type for GraphQL, you need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this Cloudinary options, and you need to specify three functions: parse value that accepts value as a parameter, a serialize function that again accepts a value, and the third one is parse literal, which works with the abstract syntax tree, and this should return something as well. So you can do modifications while GraphQL is parsing your query, or put in another way, parse value is the value that you get from the client, serialize is the value that you send to the client, and then the AST value is always going to be in a string format. So this is what is going to parse that actual literal. So this is what we will be going to use. So in light of this, we're very simply going to return value here and return value here as well. For some more sophisticated examples of how to use parse value and serialize, I recommend that you check out the Apollo GraphQL documentation. And what I'm going to do here is do a console.log ast.value and just return ast itself. Okay, so what are we doing here? We will see how this value looks like in just a second. And let's go back to here, to the schema definition, to the type definition here. So we say photo should return a string, but it should also accept options, which is of custom scalar type Cloudinary options. Okay, so that means that we'll need to create a new function called photo, and I'm going to create an explicit resolver for photo. Now, interestingly enough, the photo itself appears in my original data structure, right? So under normal circumstances, there wouldn't be a need to create a resolver function for it. In the same way that we didn't create a resolver function for the name, for the username, because if in our query we specify the name, and if our data structure contains a name, GraphQL can extract that from that. And as you saw, photo is also a part of the data structure, so GraphQL could extract its value. But because we want to override its original value, we're going to create a custom resolver function for this field. And in fact, I can very simply just return an exclamation mark here right now, save this, and no matter what data I put in, I'm always going to get an exclamation mark, right? Even for users who don't have a photo, because I am overriding the default resolver with a custom resolver. So that means that we can do some logic in here and return an updated URL. And in fact, let's do that. Let's do a very simple thing without worrying about options for now. I'm going to create a variable called URL, and we already brought in the Cloudinary library here, so we can do cloudinary.url, and we can access the photo property by saying parent.photo. And if I do return URL now, this is now going to generate the Cloudinary specific URL to access my image. Okay, so this is something that I can copy, and in my application I could load this, and here it is. We see this image right here. Okay, so we want to do some additional logic because we want to access the options. So let me do one thing. Let me go ahead and add some options in here. So say photo, and we need to type in option, or sorry, options, and let's do test 1. Okay, nothing happens, but in our console we do get test 1. So where does it come from? Well, remember, we are logging out the values. So because we have access to the values, what I'm going to do is I will allow people to pass in a comma separated list, and I'm going to split that on the comma and return that. So options, when we come to the custom resolver for photo, is going to be an array of items that go passed in as options. Okay, so let's do a quick test of this as well. So let me do a console.log options here, and let's pass in test 1, test 2, and if we check the console, this logs this array here. Perfect. So what we can do, we can say if there are some options, then, and this is just one way of implementing this. So I will assume that people will pass in a number for the width, then a flag for Q auto. So I'm going to type it out for you here. So width, that is going to be an integer, qauto a boolean, fauto a boolean, and face, which is going to be a value face. So I'm going to extract these from options, and I'm going to create an object called Cloudinary options, and we're going to build up this object by saying if qauto is equal to true, then add quality auto to the URL generation. If we have f underscore auto equals to be true, then add the fetch underscore format URL modification to auto. Now what I'm doing here is obviously I'm using the Node.js SDK for Cloudinary to make sure that qauto is set. So in the URL I had to put qauto. Using the Node.js SDK I have to put quality auto. Instead of fauto I need to put fetch format auto to the API. And I'm also putting width, and I will add an additional option regardless whether they pass it in or not. I want to get the secure URL, so I only want the HTTPS URL, because at the moment, if you check, we're returning an HTTP URL. So we want to tell Cloudinary, hey, return me the HTTPS version of the URL. And what I will do, I'll call Cloudinary.url again with parent.photo, but I will now pass in Cloudinary options, and I will return this URL. So if you have options, then I get an updated URL. Okay, so let's give this a test. Let me actually refresh this interface so that we get the updated schema. And let's do this. Let's do 300. Okay, so notice what happened on the right hand side. We now get HTTPS, and as part of the URL we also get w underscore 300. So now if I open this image, remember this was our original image, and let's see some stats about it. Let me refresh. 331 kilobytes in size, and this is probably the full width image, which I don't know how big it was, but actually it's written up here, 1234. So let's paste the new updated URL, which is now only 37 kilobytes, and of course 300 pixels wide. Let's see what else we can do. So let's add true and true as well. Okay, so now we get fauto qauto with 300. So let's copy this. So remember, we are at 37 kilobytes. Now we are only at 22 kilobytes. This is exactly what we wanted. And let's just for fun add the value face in here as well. So that should, actually I probably made a mistake here. Yeah, we didn't add the face options here, so let's do that right now. So face, so if someone enters the term face, then we want to crop the image to become a thumbnail, and we want to apply the gravity to the face of whoever is on that picture. Okay, so let's save this. Okay, and now this works. We can copy this, paste it in here, 15 kilobytes, and write focusing on the face of this particular person. So let's go through a brand new example just to make sure that everything works as we expect it to. So let's go ahead and log in as Susan and copy the token for authentication. Let's paste that in here, and let's upload I think the image is called, but let's verify, businesswoman number 2. So businesswoman 2. Okay, so Cloudinary is uploading. We get this upload image URL back. Let's go back to MySQL just to verify that everything works. Okay, so now Susan has this URL. Perfect. And let's now go ahead and say user ID number 2, and let's generate straight the face of this particular person. So let's go ahead and probably need to uncomment this. Okay, run this, copy, and look at that. That's exactly what we wanted. We can actually remove all these options from here, so I can show you how the original image looks like. So just notice we are at 9 kilobytes, and this is 460 kilobytes, the entire image. So in this video, we saw how to achieve URL modification, transformation, and media asset delivery using Cloudinary and GraphQL.